Chet Holmgren's ceiling is sky high, and it continues to reinforce how good this Thunder team can be now and in the future. We'll talk about it all on today's show.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and Inside the Thunder beat writer, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. On today's show, we're diving into Chet Holmgren and his sky-high potential, like a 2005 Disney movie. It's been through the roof, and it's been on display. You really solid against Utah. What he showed against Utah is why expectations are going to rise for this Thunder team because of how good they are. We'll dive into that, SGA's MVP case, Aaron Wiggins making a winning impact, and more. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Make sure you go check them out right now. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with new customers getting $200 in bonus bets by winning any $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins, by visiting FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So against the Utah Jazz, Chet Holmgren goes out there and absolutely dominates. 35 points, 14 rebounds, an assist, 2 steals, 3 blocks. And I tweeted this out there in the game that the Thunder were doing a much better job of finding him and spoon-feeding him buckets. And Mark reiterated that point in the post-game press conference about how, for Chet Holmgren, it's not as though he's lacked aggression or hasn't played with enough offensive force. It's also that, the guards, at times have been trying to find the balance of when to find him. And I think that is a good checkpoint of remembering these things take time. Chet Holmgren is only a rookie, and it feels like, because it's been 60-something games, it feels like, we've been watching this team forever because you're living and dying with the results, and this season's been so fun. This is a extremely small sample size, and it's an extremely delicate balance because you have an interesting dichotomy between Chet and the ball handlers, right? You have 2 ball handlers in SGA and in J-Dub who, if they're attacking mismatches, you love it. You love to see those 2 guys going and operating in the mid-range and getting to the rim because of what they can do as a shot makers. So finding the balance of when do they hit the gas versus when do they actually hit Chet on a pop or actually hit Chet on a roll, that's difficult for them. And then on the same token, for Chet Holmgren, you've seen it, especially at the start of the year, it's gotten better and better continuously and will only from here get better. You've seen where, he might pass up an open 3. He might not, even be looking to shoot the open 3 because he's looking to get into the next action because of how good of a playmaker he is. So him finding the balance of when do I lean on that playmaking, as a guy who can be a really connective passer, versus when do I lean on, hey, I'm just going to shoot this pill right now. So like the preference being, you're just scratching the surface of what this team is in terms of sheer process, right? Before we talk about anything else, the process of how they're going to work together is just barely at the tip of the iceberg right now. You've not gotten enough time to develop as good as they will after a summer of work, after a couple seasons. And this is already how good it is. This is the baseline. I think it's fair to say that this is the worst the Thunder are going to be, and they're top 3 in offense, defense, net rating. They're the best team in the West right now. They're all these things. And I think that they're continuously get better, and a lot of that is due to Chet Holmgren. Because what's interesting is you have 3 guys who I don't really know what the book's going to be on defending them. I don't know if there'll be a book written on how to defend them. When you look at Chet Holmgren, how do you simply position yourself to defend a guy like Chet? If you give him too much space, he's going to shoot the three. If you play too close up to him, he's going to either cut past you as an 80 percentile cutter, or beat you off the dribble, or attack your hard closeout if you're going to respect this three ball and get to the lane, get to where he wants to be. If you turn your back to him and give your attention to Shai, who's an MVP, or J-Dub, who's an incredible shot maker and on a superstar trajectory, you don't want to lose sight of Chet Holmgren, this 7-foot, scorer, who, by the way, is incredible defensively, but we're not even talking about that right now. Like, what do you do? How do you defend Chet Holmgren? How do you defend J-Dub? How do you defend Shai? You've got to answer 3 of those questions. Most teams only have one guy who it's like, I don't know, this is going to be a tough cover. This is going to be tough to figure out just how we handle our business to even hope to contain them. It'll be interesting to see what ends up working and not working, because I think right now, a large part of when the Thunder, sparingly have stalled out offensively, or when, these 3 guys have sparingly had lackluster offensive games, a large part of that has been, either A, their own just pure off nights, which every player goes through, or B, has been growing pains in the sense of, playing off of each other and then continuing to learn that skill. And they're going to continue to get that skill, and Chet's going to continue to get better at that. And they're going to get better at finding Chet. It's a two-way street. And in this game, it was perfect. Chet was living above the rim, exploding his way there. He had a poster on Taylor Hendricks that will, arguably be a highlight of his career. That's going to be a great dunk for a long time. I don't know how you're going to top that as a 7-footer at the rim. He gets Walker Kessler an and one poster alley-oop. One of the prolific shot blockers. So when you look at Chet, the fact that he can score at all 3 levels, the fact that he can play finish, he can connectively play make in the high post, and he can create for himself a little bit, as you see with that ability to just straight line drive, past hard closeouts, with some of his, Dirk fades and some of his spin moves through the lane. You can generate a look for him and get to a spot in that way. Plus playing off of 2 high gravity guys. When the playoffs roll around, which, this Thunder team might be young, but they're quickly entering that conversation of, the playoffs being the mindset and the thing you're working toward or working all this for is to eventually be able to implement it in the playoffs. When you get to the playoffs and those 3 guys are taking the lion's share of the minutes, and they're on the court for, all but 7-8 minutes of a game, how do you defend them? How do you, flush out your defense and your game plan? Because just as teams, usually only have one guy who, or one or maybe 2 guys, if you're a really, really good team, who you need to give a lot of attention to offensively. But that same token, they usually don't have a plethora of just high-end elite defenders who can stop scores like Shai and stop scores like Dub and have the combination of foot speed and size to defend Chet. And this is something that I've talked about since the preseason, but it remains true in this game where you're seeing, John Collins, you're seeing Taylor Hendricks, you're seeing Walker Kessler. Like, you're seeing a pretty much every iteration or variation of a big man that you can see in the NBA anymore. You saw all 3 of those versions try to cover Chet, none successfully, really. So I talked about this in the preseason of people were freaking out back then about, Chet and how, his size might limit him against modern big men. The real story is the advantages that he creates on the other end. because he can't cover Embiid. He can't cover, Jokic. No player in the NBA can. But there is a longer list of guys that can't cover him. And so that just continues to reinforce this idea that we had, way back in October and September, of this offense being a pick your poison offense of just, what do you do? How do you cover all three guys at once? Who do you give the attention to? Because not only do you have three guys who can make you pay, but you have three guys who are willing to work together and willing to make the right reads and willing to make life easier on all of them. So, to this point, from everything they say off the court and everything that they do on the court, more importantly, if Shai's getting all the attention, he's getting hounded, he's not afraid or ashamed to be a decoy or to let J-Dub operate or anything like that. So they can spread you out and they can make your life just extremely difficult. And so we'll talk more about Chet, because I think that this is another guy who has stardom written all over him. Now, again, for Chet and J-Dub, that is the plane that they're on, the trajectory that they're on. But I don't really see what's stopping it. We'll talk about that coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at Nissan. Check out Nissan right now, because you want to go there to NissanUSA.com and pick your own adventure, really. If you are someone who likes to push things a little bit further, likes to go and see what adventure is right around the corner, our friends at Nissan have the lineup of SUVs for you, because they have the capabilities to take you on that adventure and take you to the next level of adventurous things. Like the Nissan Rogue. 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives, but also perfect for the Great Escape. Very versatile, the Nissan Rogue. They are great with the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. But the Nissan Pathfinder, 2024 Nissan Pathfinder, that has room for up to 8 with an expansive cargo capacity and the advanced 4x4 capacity for you with a 284 horsepower, up to 6,000 pounds of towing. It is great for the Nissan Pathfinder. And you can also check out the Nissan Armada, which is a full-size SUV. So they really have you covered with no matter what you're looking for at Nissan to help you tow bigger and push your adventure forward. So take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next adventure by shopping at NissanUSA.com. NissanUSA.com. Also want to tell you right now about our good friends over at FanDuel. Check them out today at FanDuel.com. They are awesome to go check out right now, because it is going to be the most unproductive day and couple of days in American society right now, because, folks, it's March Madness. So say goodbye to your busted brackets, because FanDuel is going to let you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or the 1 seed, it's time to go dancing with America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 on point spreads, money lines. You pick them and you can win it all at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon, and bet on college hoops all the way through, them cutting the nets down. Check it out today at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. What a game this was for Chet Holmgren. You look at this individual game: 35 points, 14 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, 3 blocks. 66% from the floor in 30 minutes. And I just think that he has such an array of skills that all complement what the Thunder are doing and what the Thunder do as a team from top to bottom, that it just allows your ceiling to reach the point where the Thunder are legitimate championship contenders. You can hold out reservations about their age. You can talk about their size if you want to till the cows come home. But the Thunder, if you're not going to put them in that championship contender, slot right now, you certainly will come October. And I don't think that they're going to give up their spot on that mountain anytime soon because of how good they are already. And again, I only think that they're going to get better. Look what happened for J-Dub from year 1 to year 2. A summer working out with Shai and just getting better. Same thing for Chet Holmgren. All three of them have a similar mindset and a similar work ethic that I just don't see, how it fails or how, they lack in any way. This team has everything that you can need to go on a deep run. It could be this year, and certainly you'd be talking about that next year. I think that this season is still about the feel it out process in the sense of, nothing would be disappointing or falling short in this season. Because you do want to get your first test of the postseason. I think that the Thunder are good enough to win their first round matchup, and then anything past that is essentially, gravy. But then next season, you're looking at how they rebound from that. And, to this point, they've answered the call extremely well, both in the micro, and the macro. Like throughout this season, if you remember, in the first part of it, we were talking about how the Thunder, couldn't really protect leads. That's no longer a conversation anymore. They've course corrected that, right? Whenever they blew that lead to New Orleans on ESPN, and they blew some other ones, like that's no longer in the conversation for Oklahoma City. As just a quick example of, they've already course corrected things this season. From last year to this year, they've course corrected things over the course of an off season. I just think that that's going to keep happening because I think that you have an incredible coaching staff, an incredible, developmental team who is like, developing at a rapid pace and has the work ethic and everything to develop. And Chet Holmgren's potential is that of a star. And it sounds crazy. And it sounds too good to be true. And history tells you that the more pessimistic you are in these things, because only one team can win a championship, and how rarely that it comes together in this way, that you're going to be right more often than not if you're pessimistic. But when you look at it just objectively, there's no law that says you can't have 3 superstars. There just isn't. And the Thunder are on track to have 3 superstars. Because everything that Chet Holmgren did in this game was repeatable. It wasn't as though he shot 6 for 6 from 3. And I say that not in a demeaning way to his 3-point shot. Obviously, he's a good 3-point shooter. But like any player who goes 6 for 6 or 7 for 7 or whatever, that is, you're not going to do that night in and night out. Everything he did, you can do night in, night out, and actually you can do better. In the sense of that 3-point shot. It's the same example, but 1 for 5 from 3 tonight. Would it have stunned you if 2 more of those threes go in? You can see where even just the ball rattling home can already improve what Chet's doing. And we've talked about this since 2 years ago with Shai. But the key difference in scores and points per game is free throws. Chet got to the free throw line 12 times. Made 10 of them. Because you're cutting hard and because you're truly living above the rim. And I think what makes Chet so special is his ability to process even as a rookie. And this is what I think is another thing that's going to get better, which is already good. Like the baseline's already really good. But his ability to understand and process what's happening on the court. And more importantly, in addition to that, who's on the court. So for example, that Taylor Hendricks dunk, it feels like came out of nowhere. It feels like, whoa, haven't really seen Chet have that kind of hang time. And he made a joke about that after the game. But I believe that part of that was because he understood that Taylor Hendricks is a guy who we know is going to sell out for those blocks and is a crazy good athlete. And we talked all about that in the pre-draft process, that you had to bring that level of burst and explosion and physicality to that dunk. You had to do it. Whereas other times, you need more of that finesse. You need more of that working around guys versus going through them or over them. And his ability to, in real time, process how guys play him and their strengths and what to take away, what to exploit on both ends of the floor. As a rookie, I think just really shows another example of how high his potential is. And these are the unicorn things that he can do. And night in and night out, he does them. Night in and night out, he, provides something that helps you win basketball games. And I just struggle to think of how this just ends in 2 weeks whenever the calendar turns to April. Like, what's going to stop this team? We'll see. We'll watch it unfold. But they have a unique array of top-end talent with some really, really, really good rotational pieces. With Case Morales' defense and three-point shooting, Isaiah Joe's three-point shooting, an all-around game that he's improved upon, Wiggins and the impact that he makes winning games, Kenrich, you have Jalen, who you can throw out there, Jay Will, you can throw out there as a matchup problem, or as a way to counter some matchups if you want to. And Gordon Hayward is getting more and more comfortable as the days go on. So they have the top end talent, and they have enough rotational players to, again, find out how to get those 7 minutes under control, because in the playoffs, all of this changes. You play those guys more. You play Shai, you play Dub, you play Chet, you play Dort more. You're going to play those guys more. So you're really looking on any given night to have an array or an assortment of Hayward, J. Will, Kaysen, Joe, Wiggins, Kenrich. Find a way for them to make up about 7 minutes. And I think that they can do it. But the crazy part is that unless you're just purposefully being a pessimist, you have to acknowledge that the Thunder have 3 guys with superstar potential. One who's already made, the leap of he should be the MVP this year. One who has a really large sample size this season of displaying qualities that of a superstar. And a third who was the most lofted and touted prospect of the 3. The Thunder win this game against Utah. We'll talk about it more coming up. But first, I want to say right now about our good friends over at BetterHelp. Check them out today at BetterHelp. BetterHelp is awesome for you because, if you believe that you could benefit from therapy and you could enjoy some of those benefits that therapy can provide, but maybe the only thing holding you back has been not your willingness to try, but instead I'm too busy. I really cannot find time in my day between work obligations, family life, everything, to go to a traditional building and an actual therapist's office. I just don't have the time for it. If that's been what's holding you back, do not let that hold you back any longer, because sometimes we all need that opportunity to get things off of our chest, big or small, and certain things can really, really start to fester with you and get to you. So it's important to let them out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. That way, you can really start a dialogue and work through some things. So going to BetterHelp right now, you can help yourself at BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedInNBA. Get 10% off your first month of online therapy, completely and totally suited around your schedule. It's flexible. It's great. It's totally online. What you do is you fill out this questionnaire. They're going to match you with one of their licensed therapists, and then you go from there. If you happen to not click with that initial therapist, you can just redo the process and continue on until you find the right one for you at no additional charge. But go there right now to betterhelp.com/LockedInNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Go there right now at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Folks, the Thunder, in this game, it never truly felt as bad as the scoreboard would indicate, in the sense of like, the Jazz got up by 4. There were 6 lead changes, 3 ties. There were runs that the Jazz went on to tie the game or take the lead or shrink the Thunder lead to, a single possession. But it never truly felt like the Jazz were ever in this game to me. And the Thunder eventually woke up and rallied and swept the leg, so to say, getting up by 19 points in the fourth quarter and putting the kids to bed. But the Jazz win the rebounding battle by 3, I think it is, or 2 actually. They win the rebounding battle by 2, which, considering that they have Kessler and Collins and Hendricks and all these bigger bodies than the Thunder, like that's a pretty good margin for OKC. The Thunder won the turnover battle by 5, and they shot 48, 29, 79. That's the impressive part. Granted, they held Utah to 44, 27, 94, but to only shoot 29% from 3 as the best 3-point shooting team in the NBA and still get a more dominating win just shows how versatile of a profile the Thunder can win games at. OKC wins points in the paint by 2. They win second chance points, OKC does, by 4, and they dominate fast break points. 35-8. They started out 16-0 in the fast break category. And I think that you can see how pushing the pace really helps them. We've talked about that this week of what that looks like come playoff time, whenever maybe the tempo slows down and the game changes. But nonetheless, I think that the Thunder are in a great position to compete. They'll for sure compete with anybody. I don't have any doubt about that. I think that they will not get beat in less than 6 games whenever they get beat, whether it's first, second, third, or finals. Whenever they get beat, it'll be by 6 or 7 games. But who do they match up with where you just think that there's no shot that they can win? To me, there's not a team like that. So that's encouraging in and of itself. And when you look at the Thunder just top to bottom, Wiggins was great in this game in the fourth quarter. He really helped you put this game away. And then SGA is the MVP. Like, I don't understand why the conversation has flipped. And we'll talk about this tomorrow, really, for the first entire segment, honestly. I don't understand why the conversation has flipped. But as long as SGA is the first seed in the West, there should be no debate if he's the MVP. And even if he lost the first seed, you could still debate that he should be the MVP. But if he's first place in the West, there's no excuse not to give him MVP of this league. Because we've never judged MVPs this way until this year. We've never judged it on who the best overall player is. We've never judged it on who's the best historical player or who's the best player in prior seasons. This has been a drama-filled, storyline-filled league. That's what this has evolved into. And you have to remain consistent in that of, number one, Shai has MVP production, and production not far off of Jokic, as the historically efficient guard who's got his 50th 30-point game in this game against Utah. Like, number one, that matters, that his stats are there. But number two, he has been the catalyst for this biggest surprise of the NBA season, where the Thunder are the number 1 seed in the West. They're going to win their 50th game soon. And who knows how much that they end with in terms of win total. Like, all that stuff matters in the MVP conversation, at least it has up until this point. There is no reason that SGA should not win this MVP award to me. Because we've just done it. We've just done it this way for as long as I can remember. Jokic has 2 MVPs, so that counts against him actually most of the time in voting. Guys who already have collected their awards. And Shai is doing something that we've never seen before, in the sense of, like, we've seen Jokic dominate before. We have not seen this Thunder team yet emerge the way that they have this year. So rewarding that is huge. And again, forgetting storylines, just going based upon facts and stats, Shai has put up a statistical MVP season. And so if you want to decide it by who's first place in the West, I can't really blame you. But I think Shai should be the MVP no matter what the standings say, like no matter who's where. But if you want to just give it to and make it easier of who finishes ahead of who, I understand that because Jokic has been so great this season. But if Shai is the one seed in the West, I just don't see how you can vote for anyone but him. I really don't. Even though Jokic has been great, Jokic has been awesome. Nonetheless, though, important stretch for OKC coming up. You got Toronto, which is going to be one of their last, gimme games. And this is another point of why I think that Shai, is going to be a guy who should win MVP and who should be, your vote getter. Because for him to have this team won in the West and for him to continue on at this efficient pace and keep having these 30-point games, he's going to have to go through Milwaukee twice, New Orleans on the road, Phoenix, New York on the road, Boston, Indiana, Sacramento, and Dallas, and Philadelphia. So, if he goes through that gauntlet of a schedule in these last 14 games, there'd be no excuse not to vote for him or not to give him the award. But it's an important stretch because you have Toronto on Friday. Then maybe Houston, of course, but Houston's always been a kind of troublesome team for the Thunder, and also they're playing good right now, even despite losing Şengün. Then you have the Hornets on the 7th, and then the Spurs on the 10th. Those are your last 3 gimme games. You never see consecutive off days again after that 3-day break leading into the Jazz game. You do not get consecutive off days until the week before the playoffs. So you finish out this regular season with 3 back-to-backs and no consecutive off days. You've got to capitalize on playing Toronto and beating down the Raptors on Friday. That's a big, big game we'll talk about on tomorrow's show. Also, tomorrow's show is a mailbag podcast. So subscribe on YouTube and all the other podcasting platforms. And make sure that you leave your comment down below, your question for tomorrow's show, and do that on Twitter as well at Rylan_Styles. But until then, be good and be good to one another.